Okay, so click and go live. And we are live. So, hi, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to our session today. I'm really excited to share that we have Chris Callan with Plots, Dustin Burns with McCone Gordon, and Joshua Wand with Suffolk here on our session today. So, really excited to talk about innovations in job site coordination with this dynamite lineup. And I will pass it over to the team here to introduce themselves. So first off, let's kick it off with Chris. Take it away.
Thanks, and good morning, everyone. My name is Chris Cowan, founder and CEO of Plot. So a bit of my background, grew up in a construction family, concrete subcontractor, mother and father kind of worked in it full time. So I was naturally involved at a very young age and rebelled and got into software. And that was my degree and my first real job. But once I started to see the power technology was having in construction, I rejoined that family company and led it for about 5 years. So we adopted a lot of tech, started building some technology. I launched my first startup in 2017 and learned a lot of lessons throughout that process, especially about adoption and getting something pragmatic out to those not only in the construction industry, but specifically those in the field. Who are typically not spending their hours of the day in front of a computer. So learned a lot from that practice or for that experience. And then in 2021, we launched Plot, which is focusing on job site coordination, encapsulating delivery management and procurement scheduling. So making sure that material is ordered on time in order for it to arrive and be installed on time. So I call it the offsite scheduling as compared to more of those typical scheduling that focuses on those installation activities. So pleasure to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't build a job without the materials. So super important stuff. Let's go next to Dustin for a brief intro.
Yeah, good morning. Dustin Burns with McCown Gordon. I'm the VP of technology here for the last 18, 20 years or so, where I oversee everything from IT support to innovation. So excited to join you all today and talk about some of this innovation around procurement management on the job site.
Fantastic. And last but certainly not least, Josh.
Howdy, everybody. My name is Joshua Wyand. I'm the Director of Emerging Tech for Suffolk Construction. And what I'm doing here is just, managing our piloting process, introducing new tech into our innovation funnel, and driving the adoption of our pilots and technology across our projects.
All right, awesome. So thank you all for being here today. Really appreciate you sharing your thoughts with us. So just diving right into it, let's talk about, who's using these tools, right? So we know we have to do job site coordination, we have to get the materials to the site. Who are the typical end users that are looking at this stuff every day?
Yeah, so from our point of view, we really focus in on the job site trailer team. So the individuals that report to the trailer, work through the trailer, and then most of the time will move throughout the site on a hour by hour basis. So we definitely want to include those that work in the office and in pre-construction, but our primary focus is on the superintendent. The foreman of the subcontractor is absolutely a crucial role for anything job site coordination because they are managing the material procurement for 80–90% of material showing up to site and the crews that are going to install it. So the know-how of when and how something needs to occur focuses on it. Those are our two primary focus individuals, or at least personas. And obviously, a lot of our job sites today have field engineers that are typically younger, coming in with more of a digital native perspective or a little background. And not only not only want to use technology in their day-to-day job, but they expect it because it surrounds every other aspect of their position or of their lives. So those are who we really focus on. Project managers definitely involved in our scheduling side. But those are the individuals on our side that we focus on when we're designing our interfaces and our experience.
Absolutely. So curious to also get the perspective from the contractor side as well. Dustin and Josh, if you want to share, who's typically doing job site coordination day to day? Who are the key players in this?
Yeah, my answer to that is, like the industry, it's pretty diverse. You know, so depending on the size of the project, the size of the company, the role of the individual, it varies quite a lot. And kind of tagging on what Chris said there is, you know, you have some young engineers that are born with the technology in their hand, and then you have folks that have 30 years of experience that this is sort of new. But in my opinion, it takes all of them together to make this successful.
Yeah, just bouncing off what Dustin said, exactly right. I mean, these are collaborative tools, so by nature, the more people that are involved, the better the output we usually get. So, whenever I think of job site coordination tools, the first and most important group to get involved is the field team, right? And then shortly followed by the subcontractor team, because if they're leaving all the administrative burden on our team, then a lot of that value is lost, right? And that's the whole point of them being collaborative, right? So we can all get involved, we can all make our feedback heard, and make the biggest splash.
So there are multiple levels to, who's doing job site coordination. We've got layers and layers of different teams that touch different parts of the process. So how does that work with the technology implementation? So you can't go it alone, right? You kind of have to get that tech into the hands of multiple people and entities to kind of get it all going smoothly. So can you speak to any of that? And this is for any of the panelists here.
Yeah, I think kind of digging into what Josh was saying there about it's a collaborative process. You know, there's no one entity that's standing up these buildings and this infrastructure and that sort of stuff. And so it just kind of makes sense that the tech solutions have to be collaborative as well. And I think, the hurdle there is making sure that you're involving everyone that needs to be involved and providing them the support that they need to see the value.
Yeah, and bouncing off that see the value piece, I mean, that's the most important thing. If no one understands why you're doing something, or they just don't understand the problem statement or what you're trying to solve for, it's really hard to get that buy-in, right? I mean, the first buy-in approach I always do is start with the problem, because if we can sit here and talk about wildly innovative things that aren't going to actually move move the needle. But if I can talk about something that's actively happening on your project that's causing actual hangups, then people are starting to go, okay, now I'm interested. And like, once you get that interest, once you get that buy-in, everything else kind of comes naturally. People start wanting to participate, right? And wanting to again see the value that I'm supposedly pitching. So there is an art of sales, right? Being able to get people to buy into that vision. But I mean, it's all part of the game. And again, why I love what I do.
Yeah, shared vision. And it's all ultimately to, build the best project that we can build together as a team. So, 100%. So I'm curious to know as well. So with multiple layers and stakeholders and getting that buy-in from a whole bunch of different people in the process, does it make it more challenging to scale the technology, or is it actually simpler? Really curious to see kind of both sides from the tech provider side as well as the builder side of it.
Yeah, I think for us, it's always, you can talk in binary like behind Dustin's head, or you can talk in engineering speak, you can talk about UX and UI, you can talk everything you want on the technology side. But something that I've really learned really the hard way is that none of these contractors care about your technology. They don't care about the software. They care about the outcome. And that outcome is only it only has a shot of being successful if you're able to produce something that will change habits, and you'll allow someone to say, this is the way we used to do things. This is the workflow that was painful enough to adopt a solution, or at least attempt to adopt a solution. And if you start to see that switch of, I'm no longer doing the status quo, and I now find that not only me as an individual who might be championing it on a project, but the individuals that they are starting to loop in, especially once again, the subcontractor foreman. That's the persona I always go back to. And I think of my dad when we're going through these workflows, is would my dad do it a different way? And once again, it's not about them saying, I want to use a tool, I want to do something like that. It's, I want to free up time to focus on what really matters, or what can't be automated or streamlined. And so we always look for habit change. And once we've seen that shift has been made, then and especially with different personas, you start to get a little bit of some connections happening, some networking happening, and one project brings on the second. Those two projects bring on the third and the fourth quicker than the first. And when you start to see that, I think you
Mhm.
can see that that does start to snowball. But the inverse is true. If you're not able to have something that materially changes how people do work and how they want to do work, then every single project you're going to have a battle of doing the sales process, as Joshua mentioned, as going out there and championing a tool for them to see that end goal. So I think it's very important that they have the capacity to see the value within the first 30 minutes, or hopefully quicker than that, within 5
Yeah.
minutes. And I know how we do it today. I know what this is doing. I can see what it's doing. And that's why we build interfaces that are so we want to deliver that value as quickly as possible before they get invited, before they do a training session. So it's just nonsense, or it's so sensical. It's so just so in front of them that they don't really have to spend much time trying to find the value.
Yeah, simplicity. I love how you put it in the beginning, Chris, where it's like, yeah, contractors, they don't necessarily care that much about the software. It's like what it can do for us, that outcome, the value. So it's always good to keep in mind. Dustin and Josh, anything else on that topic?
Yeah. No superintendent wants me to show up at their job site and say, I know something you don't know.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that that is not the approach to get buy-in. And it is harder
Mhm.
to do buy-in correctly. But it ultimately leads to more success. And that buy-in starts, superintendents running the job site. If they're not bought in, good luck. You know, and a lot of that for us really comes down to the culture. If you have that innovative culture kind of in your DNA, you'll tend to have more people that are open to being bought in. And it really starts with that defining the problem. Nobody wants us running around with technology looking for problems to solve. So it's being
Mhm.
deliberate and structuring that's the sell, as Josh says, to that internal team to get bought in.
Yeah, I mean, answering the question about, is it easier, is it harder, depending on, the group. In my mind, the more minds you need to change, the harder it's going to be. But, to put simply, there's always 100 reasons to not do something, but field teams only need one, which traditionally has been, well, that's the way we've always done it. And that's always the, the hardest one to get past, right? But the most important thing for me, and again, how I approach it is that, again, if we can, create this holistic movement around like an improved process and start showing that value, minds do, again, to Chris's point, snowball. And we have seen this actually like make it to where our jobs in the future are even easier, especially with tech that we're trying to roll out, because those same subcontractors, those same trade partners on our other jobs are like, oh man, you guys were using X, Y, and Z over there. Like, are you guys using that here? Awesome. They're already bought in, they're already engaged, they already know our process. And again, it's not something that happens all the time, right? But it's a nice, easy way to kind of dip our toes into that change management process and get people on board.
Definitely. And I am keeping an eye on our chat here and want to say to our audience, absolutely, please continue to drop in questions, comments for our speakers here. We love to see the engagement. And I will pull on a question that came in for Maggie. For Dustin and Josh, how do you gather the pain points from your field team? Do you just speak with them often? Do they come to you?
Yeah. For me, I had the luxury of actually starting in the field, so like I already understand like what a lot of their problems are. But more specifically, I'm able to speak their language, and so a lot of times like they view me as an IT person, even though I don't do any sort of IT thing remotely. Like I don't do any of that, right? I mean, I can't fix a printer, I can't do that. So the more I can shift a perception around like what I'm trying to do and what I'm trying to accomplish with technology, the better the outcomes I got. So what I often tell people is that like I am your job site therapist. The more you can tell me about the problems that you're facing, the more I can help you. But if you just lock up and you go, technology, I'm not sure like what to talk about. Talk to me about how it's hard to do pre-qualification for MWBE subs. Awesome. I got tech for that. Talk to me about how it's difficult to do
Hmm.
this, or talk about how it's difficult to do that. And I can help you with technology. But as soon as you start like, again, trying to force a dialogue inside of a box, and that box being, okay, construction technology, it becomes very, very hard. So the more I can kind of like show ways that we're able to help. Hey, I can help reduce your builder's risk with X, Y, and Z tools. That's an appealing conversation. Oh, I didn't even know you guys could do that. That's awesome, right? So again, it's all about shifting that perception. A lot of blue collar folks, and again the folks that I love and the folks I've worked with, tend to again have this perception that like tech's out there, tech's scary, or tech's like again this specific thing. But then once I show them, okay, here are tangible benefits that other projects are seeing, and here's how they're seeing them again, and they're seeing it through tech, they go, okay,
Mhm.
Josh, I have this problem. I don't know if you can help me with it. That's where the gold mine is. As soon as you can get to that level of trust and that level of willingness to talk about problems, I can get to that willingness to adopt tech, and I can get to that
Yeah.
willingness to move tech through the funnel and hear those problems. So very long way to answer that question, but it's a long answer.
I think you nailed it when you said like getting that level of trust. That's kind of the big lever there to kind of get the change going. So, Dustin, anything to add to that question? Like, how do you gather pain points from your field teams?
Yeah, you have to be in the trenches with them, you know.
Mm.
You have to
Hmm.
understand what their day-to-day life is, and you don't get that from sitting in an office like this. You get that from being out there in the field and interacting and listening, and everything top to bottom, being involved and knowing about it. I have the unique position, and I kind of started the IT department, and most of the processes that the business runs, I've had some involvement with. So I sort of
Hmm.
know naturally where those pain points are, but that does nothing for me if I don't have relationships with our field staff and our
Yeah.
operations staff. And that's the conversation that is really hard to get to sometimes, is what don't you like about what you do on a daily basis? And if you can
Right.
start drawing out some of that information, then you can translate that to your technical vision. But kind of like Josh, it's sometimes a box gets painted around you. My title is VP of IT. So when I talk to people, they're like, "Oh, he wants to talk to me about technology." No, I want to talk about business problems. I want to talk about
Yeah.
risk management. I want to talk about operational excellence. It's the language that we're using to communicate with them is very important.
All right. Good stuff here. I want to pivot this question to Chris because, from the tech provider side, you're building solutions that are connecting with these pain points. So how do you first identify, oh, this is like what's actually really hurting teams out there? And hey, I have an idea, I have a way that we can actually fix this. So how do you go about that identification process?
Yeah, I'd love to say there's a silver bullet or a method that I could throw out there and do, but it just takes time. Kind of to John's
Hmm.
point, the fact that I, come from the field, I come from a construction family, it allows me to have a certain level of empathy with what's being said, and I think that's really where you start to, find ask the why 5 times, and you start to really get down to root cause. But contractors, superintendents, subcontractors, they are not shy to say what is wrong, what needs to be fixed. These are inherent problem solvers. And if you engage them in the process of solving this problem, you get so much valuable detail and so much valuable insight into what we build. I say over and over and over, we get asked by the investor side of the world, what's your roadmap? What are you going to build in 2 years?
Yep.
And I go back to them, I say, our contractors have not told us that yet. And what
Mm.
what my job is as a product, my product hat when I am deciding how we build our tool is simply a translator. And that's two
Mm.
focus. It's getting an analog and often unstructured problem into a calculator that an algorithm can solve, and we can actually achieve something. And it is also gathering. So how do I gather from contractor A and B and C and determine something that's valuable to all three of them that would obviously make the engineering effort worthwhile? So it's translation, it's aggregation, it's a bit of just we encapsulate it underneath the term of discovery. And I literally think of the legal process throughout that. You're looking at evidence, you're looking at exhibits that
Mm.
contract in. Our procurement tool, we looked at hundreds, probably thousands of procurement log spreadsheets, and we started to see some things that they all did the same, but it really does not kick in until you get that testimony, that you know subject matter expert giving you a very deep reason why. And once again, that's the only way you're going to get them to change any sort of habits. So our entire job as software providers is listening to problems, identifying potential solutions, and then figuring out how to put that into a package. And that package can be hard, And the one thing I kept on kind of thinking back and forth while Joshua and Dust were talking was, the way that we market our solution is often so different than how contractors describe their problems. And that disconnect is very difficult to cross, but that's why we have the individuals inside of contractors that can help reverse translate it and see what's on
Yeah.
the market as a solution back to the problems that they're hearing about. And I think that the industry has gotten so much better at that bilateral communication from
Mhm.
problem to solution provider back to purchaser or champion. And I think that's something that webinars such as this are a perfect example of that working well.
All right. Yeah, that was very well said. My takeaway from that was for tech providers out there, sharpen up those listening and translating skills because that's really going to build the foundation of not just the product, but the relationships you're going to have with the industry moving forward. So yeah, great stuff in there. So we're getting a lot of great engagement in the chat and the comments, so please keep them coming. Just want to shout out a few of them. So Guido in the comments is agreeing on the buy-in, also noting, too many AEC companies try to boil the ocean when it comes to tech. So trying to solve enormous problems before locking in quick wins. I think this is in regards to the value conversation we had earlier. So thanks for that comment. We also have another comment from Glendalise. Hopefully, I'm saying all these names correctly. To Dustin, one of your comments earlier, innovation culture is essential because we can make all the difference with implementation and utilization. And then we have another question for Josh and Dustin, which I'll move to from Charles. So for Josh and Dustin, based on what you've seen and heard from your field teams, what are the largest or most urgent pain points or category that has not yet been served or attempted by any tech solutions? Which I'm also very, very curious to hear the response to this as well.
Human cloning. So we need more bodies. We need more people. But I think that's where the technology is going to serve us well. So we can relate most any technology advancements in efficiency and that sort of stuff and accuracy back to being able to get the work done with the amount of people you have. And so that's really the basis of most pain points is right now, our trade partners don't have the people, we don't have the people. And so everybody is just trying to get done what they can with what they have.
Yeah, I'll just touch on that and say that, if you want me to give you like a wonderful startup idea, I'm fresh out, unfortunately. But what I will say is that, there are plenty of real problems, like real, very real problems in the construction space. And the three biggest ones, in my honest opinion, as Dustin just said, manpower is a horrible problem. So there's a Forbes article about like 4 years ago that said that 40% of the workforce in construction is over the age of 50. So doesn't take a whole lot of smart people to realize that, like, we're going to have a lot of quality issues and a lot of manpower issues and a lot of rising labor cost issues very, very quickly if we cannot get a lot of people in this industry and trained up very quickly. So obviously, though, we are fast approaching a world where it's going to be tough to see, if I'm going to have a job in like 15 years, right? So, or even less than that, right? So that being said, what I'm trying to get at with that is that there's a lot of awesome tools that I've seen that are trying to supplement work and for the project teams to be able to again assist with workflows. Some of which I've seen that are in stealth mode, some of which haven't haven't made a huge splash, but that's the biggest thing I'd say, just to kind of answer that question in a long way. The other one being that costs in general are rising like crazy. So material costs, labor
Mhm.
costs are very, very high. Finding a way to be able to drive those costs down is unbelievably important. You want to immediately make success in this industry. Tell me how you're going to save me money, because that's the first thing a project manager is going to ask me whenever I come forward with an expensive piece of tech.
Yeah.
ROIs need to be clear and succinct. And then the last thing I'll talk about is that sustainability in this industry is horrible. What we do, like just to build things on a day-to-day basis, is very, very hard on the world. And so we've seen a lot of success and big splashes from the sustainability side. Mass timber obviously being the hot word right now. So anything that's going to again solve those big three problems, you're going to find a lot of business in this industry.
Great feedback. Thank you guys for sharing those nuggets of information there. Really appreciate it. So we are getting a few more questions, but I do want to talk a little bit more on the topic of, job site innovation, and then the relationship that we have between GCs and subs, right? So how does technology work when it has to, be managed by the GC, but you're relying on data inputs from the subcontractor, and it's all going into one spot in the software? How do you address the differences and the needs that come from each group there?
Yeah, it's appreciation of differing personas, and I'll go back to the word empathy. I think that
Hmm.
for currently our customers are mostly general contractors, but most of our users are trade partners on those projects, and so we're always driving the point that general contractors receive value in the form of efficiency gains and less time management, time savings in that front. But how do we get that subcontractor to come plot day after day and immediately get value out of that interaction? And it's just all about showing them how they're doing it today and how the effective solution is bettering that workflow. So we always try to work on two aspects. We want to make sure that there's efficiencies, there's savings there on what I'll call the builder side of the relationship. But I think that you always do have to respect that we typically refer to ourselves as contractors, not builders, and that there is that relationship, that fragmentation between the general contractor and the trade partners. And you extend that one step further and you think about procurement and deliveries to that vendor or that material supplier, manufacturer. So, the fragmentation of the industry is obviously something that you have to keep front of mind, and making sure that while everyone is collaborating in a way to benefit the project team, they all are still being protected in their own regard, and they do have their own needs and priorities taken into account. So we don't want to be a software that trades use because the GC said to. We want to be a valuable tool to everyone, and that value looks different depending on which side of that it is. So we always focus on what's sub value, what's GC value, and we want to make sure that we always keep that very obvious, because they have obvious different priorities. And I'm a subcontractor by background. I think about 5% of 20 projects, whereas a GC typical mind, they think about 100% of one project. And
Hmm.
that in that project versus program management mindset. I mean, even out in other industries, those management tactics, the workflows, that's a very different subject matter when you're thinking about manpower, equipment, and materials across a lot of job sites versus managing a lot of inbound to a single job site. And we just try to be cognizant of that, but we always go back to the actual individual and say, is this valuable to you? Are you getting what you need to justify your expense, which maybe to the subcontractor right now isn't a license fee, but it is their time, which we
Hmm.
value above all.
Josh and Dustin, anything to add on GC sub relations with tech implementation?
Yeah, I'll say that we're in the business of serving the whole field, right? But one thing that's
Hmm.
always a challenge is, again, when I'm translating that value, and again translating these collaborative platforms, or what we're trying to do, showing how again in the same breath of again showing them the value what we're trying to do. The other part being that showing them that like we're going to try to reduce administrative effort on their end, or how it's going to reduce like hangups on their end, is a real big thing. So a lot of times whenever I'm talking with new pieces of tech is, okay, how are you guys going to integrate with our current tech stack? And that's such a big part of it. I mean, I can't tell you, first of all,
Expect,
how
yeah.
many times I've heard the words a single source of truth enough to make a drinking game out of it. But again, the important part is, right, every single time we add a new additional thing, it usually creates an additional administrative effort on someone else. So I recently had a great conversation with a great tech company who showed me again what I thought was just the next big thing. But then I paused and I was like, man, this is actually double entry now for all of our project teams, right? So taking that step back and going,
Mm.
okay, how is this going to actually impact the people in the field and their workflows? Again, shows them that you care and shows them that you respect them. Once you've kind of translated the fact that you care about what they're dealing with and you care what they're going through, it makes everything else you're trying to do a lot easier, right? So hopefully that answers that one.
Thanks, Josh.
Yeah, the trade partner's life from a technology standpoint is pretty interesting. And, jumping from different prime contractor to prime contractor, and one's using this flavor and the other one's using the other flavor, and how do you keep all of that straight?
Yeah.
That really kind of lends into what we were talking about earlier around buy-in, and it's not only our team's buy-in, it's all of our trade partner buy-in, and kind of tying into what Josh says, that there has to be value in it for them. Yeah, you can put it in the contract that they have to use it, and they will by contract. You're going to pay for it, but if it's something that makes their business better, then they'll be happy to use it and happy to help you along the process. And the interesting thing around that is a lot of that buy-in is not gained by me and my team. That's gained by our field staff. So our field staff is out there, and not only do they have to be bought into the solution, they have to get all their trade partners bought into the solution, which is just a totally different process.
Absolutely. So we do have a couple more questions here. I want to read this one out. So this is for Josh and Dustin again. So this is from Steve. We at Skillet, sorry, Steve Hamilton. We at Skillet have a database of craft workers and a platform to help companies find skilled workers they need. What have been your pain points with getting the right craft labor? So specifically for that contractor side.
Yeah, I'll just start off by saying usually quality is like the most important thing.
Yeah.
The most important thing, right? I mean, there might be like a plethora of just skilled trades out there, but the most important thing and the biggest thing that plagues our industry is rework. Just simply rework, having to do the exact same thing multiple times. And so, again, like in my mind, right, it's one thing to say, okay, look, I got this awesome resource. It's a whole other thing to say, okay, I got this awesome resource, and I can verify that they're all trained up properly and they have X, Y, and Z certifications, and that we're going to try to keep your rework down to a minimum. That's an appealing conversation to anyone that's hiring skilled workers, because again, what they're going to imagine, right, is having to do more on the job training, spread their leadership even more thin, versus again just knowing that they can count and trust on someone that's in your repertoire.
Good points there. Yeah, it's one, locating them, and it depends on where you're at, what the availability of people are. Some places are more scarce than others, and then it's finding those folks that want to go to a different location, to build a project that's out of town, out of state, what have you. And then this is a Dustin opinion, not necessarily a McCown Gordon opinion, but I do see a future in the industry where this gig worker mentality or functionality has a place here. And so I'm interested to see what potential there is for a person who's a skilled carpenter that can, kind of work like an Uber driver, I guess. But like I said, that's my opinion. I think that's something we'll see in the future.
Yeah, fascinating concept. I'm curious to see where the industry evolves to as well. So yeah, good food for thought. Thank you guys. So moving right along, we have another interesting question here from RJ. So how do you document pain points or lessons learned? And then how do you choose what platform or what problem to solve amidst plenty of challenges in our industry? And maybe I'll phrase this for Chris as well. How did you know that job site coordination was worth sinking, time, effort, I'm sure some blood, sweat, and tears into making a whole company around it? So yeah, how do you know that it's worth what the focus and attention and time that we give it?
Yeah, I'll throw out my side quickly. With first venture, I really thought that I had a golden egg. we had everything we wanted to change, a non-insignificant part of contractors' workflow. And we built it, we built it, and we built it, and we built it. And then we got it out into the real world, and reality did not agree with us. So as a software provider, I found that optionality is the word I use, is that when we first went to market with Plot, was we focused on job site coordination, about managing who goes where on a job site, and that was it. That's as much detail as we put at it. And we introduced three products. And we said, this product was adopted this amount, this was adopted this amount. We have so much more positive feedback over here. And we cut off the limb that wasn't doing well and backfilled it with another option. And so really, I always see a software provider or a soft startup founder, maybe, we're a surfer. We can navigate a board perfectly and do everything quote unquote correctly and right. But if the wave isn't responding with you, then you're out. You're gonna get taken out. So my job, I think, is once again to put options into the marketplace, developed great relationships and partnerships, and then listen and ideate and adjust as need be. Because I do feel like in order to show value, they need to see the solution in order to make that judgment call. So that's how we approach, how do we quantify what deserves to be solved in what priority.
Gotcha. And then back to Dustin and Josh. So out of, all the pain points that come up from the field that you're aware of, how do you document that and then choose what to focus on?
Yeah, crowdsourcing pain points is pretty difficult in this industry. This industry is full of resilient people who know how to get stuff done. They aren't going to wait for me to come out and wave technology at them to solve a problem. They're going to solve it themselves a lot of the times. So that is one difficulty, is actually getting and digging into those pain points. And from a documentation process, so we have a process here. We have a team called the ECMC, the Enterprise Change Management Committee. And so we funnel in all of those ideas to this team of leadership. And so that gives us the ability to educate folks on how to mature their idea or mature their problem statement into a business case, and then go look for solutions to solve it. And with that approach, we then, it's all the people in the organization that are responsible for assigning resources. So that team then commits resources either from my team or finance or marketing, whatever it happens to be. And then we make sure that those initiatives have the enterprise support that they need to be successful.
Okay.
Yeah. So first of all, RJ, great question. So for the documenting lessons learned and pain points piece, I mean, so I'll try to answer it in two different ways because I'm not necessarily sure where that's coming from. So for the lessons learned on like our pilots and the technology that we pilot and roll out, we do a postmortem after every single pilot to actually dive into, again, how we could deploy it more efficiently or effectively on the next project. But doing again the lessons learned piece for projects is always a hassle, and it's one of the things that, again, that we're heavily focused on for this next fiscal year at Suffolk, is, again, just having a streamlined process in place for identifying, lessons learned, and making sure, again, we have a process to not repeat our mistakes, moving forward. So, but to the other point, though, about the pain points piece, the most effective way, again, that we've been able to identify pain points and just be able to understand the problems that are affecting our projects is physically getting in front of them. So we have an actual meeting as part of our onboarding schedule for projects, in which, myself, or again, someone on my team is in their kickoff meeting, understanding all the ins and outs of their project, where it's located, is it the first time working with the client, who has the builder's risk, asking all sorts of leading questions. And, after, we're done asking all these leading questions, I have a pretty good idea of what kind of technology they should be focused on or should be looking at. Because the last thing I want to do is just meet a project team and I'm like, all right, here's 150 different technologies that are in our technology funnel. Tell me what you want, because you're not going to get anything. In fact, you're probably going to get a really pissed off PM that's just like, well, what the heck am I doing? So that piece has been, is always a challenge. And so to answer your other question, though, again, about like what pain points do I solve? Technology adoption is already hard enough. as is. So
Yeah.
I always pick the path of least resistance. What are they already amped up about? What are they already excited about? And then make that my priority to accomplish. Right. So I don't have like a list of 20 tools that I go to every single project. I'm like, okay, here are the 20 that I've seen like tremendous success on. Saying like, what are the problems that you're actively dealing with? And then I'm like, oh man, we just saw success with tool A that's solving that process. All of a sudden, they're very, very interested, right? And my job's a lot easier. But again, if I go about it the opposite way, you're going to have a bad time. So,
All right, love it. The lean into the strengths and what where the train's already headed, I guess, or direct the energy as needed. That's what I'm getting from that. So we do have quite a few more questions coming in, which is great. So keep them coming. I'll ask this one from Yashasvini. So, from all of your experiences, how do early adopters balance the potential risks and rewards of implementing untested job site coordination technologies in high stakes construction projects?
yeah, I'll take the bait there and
Yeah.
say you really can't. I can't. Hey, someone straight up asked me like, is there any sort of incentive to piloting technology? And the answer is, well, I'll bring donuts to your job site when I come visit y'all. But that's like the world's worst answer. I mean, there really isn't a good answer as to like what can I do to again ensure that like a tech will succeed, or try to like make them feel better about that risk, other than just establish myself as that resource in the first line of defense, that the person that they call and complain to at 8 o'clock at night. I'm here to be that person, and eventually, you'll scapegoat if the project goes that bad. But luckily, that hasn't happened yet, and a lot of our pilots are mostly successful. So, it's all about again just trying to get. Find those innovative people, lean on them, make sure that they trust you, and that you just establish yourself as a resource. That's really all you can do. Again, I besides the donut piece, that's really all you got control over. So
I want to pivot this question to Chris as well, maybe phrased a little bit differently. So, what can tech providers do to kind of de-risk an initial use case with a new technology? Because in construction, the phrase is always there. Oh, that's how we've always done it. How do you get them comfortable and build that trust? That's to get them to take that risk or be willing to do that.
Yeah, and this is a hard one. I mean, this is what keeps founders up at night, trying to
Mm-hmm.
identify the lessons learned. We always try to build out workflows. We call them lifeboat workflows. Worst case scenario, how do we get the data that's been entered and the work that's been so meticulously gathered and put into plot, for some reason, one or another, how do we get that information out and back to the process that we are competing with. We are saying that we're better than. So we've never had to use it, and I don't intend we ever do. But just simply having that as a response to a contractor is often more than enough to say, what we're doing right now it's analog. It is painful. It is broken. We have all of the pains. And this is actually something I thought about earlier in a different question, was when
Mm-hmm.
we show our product to people that only look at one area of our tool, they say, man, this covers a lot. There's a lot of different workflows. This is very complex. And the people that are working in all the areas that our tool covers, they're saying, yeah, the whole process, it's a very complex process. This is 10 times simpler than what we're doing right now. But it is very often that we see personas that don't have that full perspective view, and they don't see how big the pain is. So we try to educate on what the pains of the current process are, and then give them a bit of a confidence that worst case scenario, you're back to where you were. But as Joshua mentioned, as soon as you're in those first, second, third, fifth, 50th project, you have so much more to rely upon as far as confidence that the platform is doing what it's promising. And I do think that software providers need to stay in line to not overpromise. They need to underpromise, let the product and the workflow and the experience speak for itself. And that's when you're not getting adopting or selling technology that has very little shot of meeting an ROI.
Keep it realistic. Gotcha. And then, Dustin, so are you also bringing in some donuts for the teams or any other thoughts?
Oh, by the way, I have to
Well,
throw, we give out hats. So
Hats.
that's our thing. We'll
it's a
bring
All
good
out
right.
hat. It's a great hat. It's the trucker hat. It's a good hat.
That's a new one, so don't worry. They're coming.
Yeah, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, this is such a low risk industry. We're trying to figure out how to manage risk. Joking, obviously. So I think it's like how we manage all other risk is understand what that risk is, hedge your bets. And with any tech today, any of the newer tech that's come into the market, most of it is VC funded. So if you're not asking questions like, how are you funded? Do you make profit? What's the strategy for your business? That sort of stuff. You've got to start asking those questions. We were on a call the other week with a new startup, and I asked those questions, and they told me, they said, "You're the first person to ever ask us that." And so I think that's a little bit different, because anybody can throw up a polished website and make it look like it's a really big, well-funded organization. So it's really when you get into the meat of it and digging in, and I think the good startups out there share that information with you. They're transparent about it. They're not trying to make it seem like, they have everything figured out and all the bases are covered, maybe. So I think it's just understanding that and realizing what you're getting into.
Right. Right. Yeah, and that transparency comes back to what we were saying earlier about building the relationships between the tech providers and the builders, the contractors, and all of that. So I see how it all works together. So one of the last questions or topics that I do want to talk about and discuss a little bit is getting back into some of the details of job site coordination and schedule management. So especially when we're talking about coordinating materials, getting them to the job site, installing, etc., we kind of see differences between installation schedules, which are tracked, versus schedules for material procurements. So why do these differences exist, and why does the fragmentation happen for installation versus material procurement?
Yeah,
Well,
Dustin, go ahead.
well, I was just gonna say, when you find a 12-foot diameter storm drain going through the middle of your building pad that was not in the civil drawings,
Oops.
your installation schedule changes.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of the norm on construction projects. Is a lot of time there are surprises. There are things that you didn't know were there or you were going to come across. And so the installation sequence is ever evolving. Procurement seems to me seems to be a little bit more straight across. You order, it gets there, you install it. But the fragmentation, I think, occurs when you have this constantly changing installation schedule, then you're jumping back and trying to figure out what items do you need to move around in your procurement schedule now. And the culmination of those two can be pretty tough to manage.
Any other thoughts? And I guess as well, how does tech maybe kind of help solve the gap between those two?
Yeah, I think that, on the flip side of what Dustin's comments, to me, that job site is a shared sheet of music. You can walk out on that job site and you can look around on trade A. I can look at all other 37 trades that are having on site. I can see where they're at. I can see the understanding, and we're going to have our morning huddle and our afternoon huddle, and we're going to talk about what we've all seen with our eyes today. And that physical nature of the job site allows for the coordination to be a little bit more tangible, in my opinion. And that's all we aim to solve with software for that offsite schedule, is to make it equally transparent where the delays will be. If we do need to resequence work, what the effects of that will be. And we also have to take into account that a lot of our construction schedules are built in a push philosophy. They are sequential by nature of physics, that we start most of the time from the ground up, and we move through, and we have our parade of trades through the different areas of the site. And that is the problem solving that happens every day to adjust to that plan, because it is never completely accurate. But spurring off of every installation activity is a number of preparation activities, including procurement, that I would call a pull. And obviously that brings in the lean construction, the lean manufacturing philosophies. But that fragmentation is no longer shared in a physical area where everyone is getting that daily transparency into what is happening. And next week, we're talking about an installation that may or may not have been resequenced. Well, now we have a 5 week delay. Well, 5 week delays don't happen overnight. They happen 1 week, 1 week, 2 week, 3 week, 4 week, or whatever it might be. And our entire job as a software provider is to make that schedule transparent, make it a common sheet of music that all the parties can see as easily as they can see the job site, so that they can help identify and react to these items, so that if a unforeseen, unmitigatable delay is happening on your supply side, you at least have the ability to resequence work to maximize your output. Because our critical path does run through materials, and we just have to keep everyone aligned with that. But all of this procurement happening from the trades offsite, the only thing we can hope to do is get that information in front of the project team so that they can make the decisions and react and minimize the impact of those items.
All right. Thorough response. Thanks, Chris. So I want to touch on, let's see, with the time we have, one question that's come up in the chat here, and this is from Anudeep. And this one is for Josh and Chris, who I briefly worked with in Suffolk. How far are we in developing LLM models or prediction analytics for the risks we can see for a project we are bidding based on the data we capture through our different modes? How do we streamline different sources of data? And take maybe a second to think through that.
Yeah, I mean, the the hardest way of answering. Sorry, the reason why this is a hard question to answer is because I don't want to sound like broken record, but AI is just changing in such a weird and quick way at different speeds. And I think all of us are kind of waiting for GPT-5 to drop, right? So, it's kind of a hard question to answer. Again, in terms of time, but what I will say is that, like, when we think of risk analysis, it's multifaceted, right? It's there's schedule risk, there's weather risk, there's risk based stuff, again, municipality and the different laws and or the schedule type. So the more we can kind of pull on the resources that we already have internally, and what I mean by that is, again, like your historical data that already exists in your data tables, the better off you're going to be in being in front of that shift. So that being said, again, I think it's something that's more than likely going to have to be developed internally. And I say that knowing that 90% of this industry is still stuck in Excel hell. So again, I don't want to fall into the trap of saying, oh yeah, it's 3 years from now, when in reality, like, we have a lot of problems we got to work through first before, again, we get to that point where, every project, or sorry, every company is able to just look at a job and say, okay, based off of these, 12 different criteria, we're feeling like it's this amount of risk or that amount of risk. So a bad
Yeah.
answer, but I'm just trying to be protective.
No, not necessarily. But I think the takeaway for me is, like, step one, get out of Excel. And then we can figure out the roadmap from there. Dustin and Chris, any thoughts on that topic as well?
Yeah, I think we know how fast we're going, but we don't know how long the road is. And it's kind of, we can see some quick wins on the near horizon. I think that the best thing that LLM can allow is making software more accessible, and making the data that lives behind that software more accessible, so that people can actually take action upon it. So, it's all about bringing that information together. But as soon as we get unforeseen amounts of data that's finally, quote unquote, contextualized or structured, I don't know if we'll ever get there, we're going to identify holes, and then you're going to spend time trying to figure out how do we adjust for that. And I just think that we, once again, are risk adverse due to a lot of the nature of construction. And I definitely think that other industries are probably better suited for a more near-term major impact than us. But every software provider out there will have a strategy, will have something in place that at minimum makes their tool more accessible. But very quickly, I do think that switches. So I think a lot of nothing is going to happen for a while, and then all at once have a massive adjustment. And from our perspective, we want to be prepared for that, but we need to get once again, focus on the Excel movement, focus away from manual, getting conversations and decisions captured, because so much happens on a job site that isn't logged. It isn't identified anywhere.
Absolutely.
So we don't really know how to feed that into any sort of decision making. So
Yeah, I think
Dustin, any thoughts? Oh, go ahead.
that's everybody's desired state, right? What are my top 3 most risky projects, and what are 2 options to resolve it on? I think that's what everybody wants. But I don't know that the large language model is the answer to that. I think it's probably a small language model that's custom developed, and each company has a different way to define risk. So they may have to be custom developed for every single company, which I don't know that we as an industry understand what that lift is, and what the resources and talent that it takes for that. And all of that to say that, to Josh's point, ChatGPT 5 comes out and it solves all of that for you. It can read your data and decide what risk is, and we don't know yet. So I think, most of us are just sort of dipping our toes in the water. And, I told our organization that we're going to treat this generative AI stuff like we treat every other piece of technology. We will take advantageous we will take it on where it makes sense, and we're not going to go, boil the ocean for LLMs when we don't know if next year somebody else might do that for us.
Right. So a measured strategic approach to the transformation. Yeah. Okay. So we're in the last 4 minutes or so of our time here, and I want to go around and very briefly have each of our speakers just share one small thing that excites you specifically about job site coordination and where we're headed in the future with technology. So I'll just go around my screen here, starting with Dustin.
Yeah, I think the integration, trying not to use too many shuns, the integration for coordination is going to be really powerful. Schedules being updated based off what's going on the job site automatically. That collaborative approach to it, to where all the trade partners are bought in, they're putting in their updates. I don't have project engineers sitting around calling people all day long saying, did you order it yet? When's it going to be here? Did you order it yet? When's it going to be here? The amount of time that's spent doing that is quite a bit. So kind of moving on past that and getting a more automated collaborative approach to it's going to be exciting.
Good stuff. Josh?
Yeah, when I think of, again, like like what job site coordination is doing for us, that the biggest thing is that when I think of people that excel at project management and excel at job site coordination, it's those that are good communicators. And again, these kinds of tools are providing a medium for us to be able to have everyone be on the same page, create impacts, make sure everyone's aware of, again, like what's hot, what's moving, what's relevant. And again, once everyone's bought into that same dream and bought into the same vision and aware of what's going on in the job, people start focusing again on what's relevant, what's important. So again, that's something that's very, very exciting. Obviously, the advancements in AI and other communication mediums are making this like a really, really interesting space. But again, we're focused on the practical solutions, the here and now, what's available now, to again create the most impact. And so obviously tools like Plotter are there.
Good stuff. And last but certainly not least, Chris, what are you excited for?
yeah, I mean, it really dovetails nicely with the AI LLM conversation. Just the fact that we're starting to get more physical workflow data. We're starting to get that feedback loop of what is actually happening on the site in a quantifiable, actionable way. And we're starting to get more of that communication, more of that collaboration happening in a medium that can be quantified. And as much as we've digitized over the last decade, or even a little bit more, since we've got connectivity to the site, we've taken our paper processes and we've made them digital. And but now we're starting to see that the physical processes of what we do in day out can now be quantified. And it also, in the same breath, is allowing those individuals to that are new to the industry to be able to pick up on how things have been done, learned lessons, to be able to come in and use their talents, their inherent experiences to contribute and contribute in a quick way. So I definitely think that just moving that collaboration that is inherent to our industry to a digital medium just not only enhances the value of it, but it sets the stage for that next big chapter of us being able to adjust workflows, us to being able to change how we communicate, how we work together, and then, what can software do at that point? So I do see it as that next, stepping stone of digital
Yeah,
evolution.
good stuff. The possibilities are limitless. So at this point, we're right at time. I want to say thank you to all of our speakers today, Chris with Plot, Dustin with Macomb Gordon, and Josh with Suffolk. So thank you all for sharing your time with us, your insights, and participating. And then for anybody in the audience or who's watching this, this will be recorded on LinkedIn. So if you want to catch up on any pieces of the session, you can do so after this ends. So thank you again, and have a great rest of your week.
Thank you.